Her father raised his glass and said the words like he was handing down the 10 Commandments. To my son, finally stepping into the role he was born for. Crystal clinked. A round of applause. Even the waitstaff smiled awkwardly, as if they knew something I didn't. Except I did know. I'd known since the seating chart came out and I wasn't at the center of the table anymore. Since the invite said celebration of legacy, not partnership. Since her mother had called me sweet for ordering the wine, then ordered a different bottle without even tasting mine. And when her brother stood up, all tanned and smug in a blazer I recognized from my closet, he let out that snort laugh he always did before landing a jab. Let's also raise a glass to David, our temporary MVP. He shot me that wink he probably thinks makes him look charming. 5 years of babysitting the company until the real heir showed up. Hell of a run, bro. The table roared. Her father beamed. My wife chuckled in that tight-lipped, PR-approved way she does when she knows something's cruel but plays along anyway. Not one of them looked at me to check how it landed. I sipped the wine I didn't order, nodded like a man too polite to interrupt his own execution, and folded my napkin over my lap. I didn't smile. Not really. But I didn't speak either. What I did do was watch and count. 16 people at the table. 3 who used to report directly to me. 2 who wouldn't even have jobs if I hadn't stayed up rebuilding the client onboarding stack from scratch during the first year of the merger. And not a single one looked uncomfortable. That was the part that got me. Not the betrayal, but the comfort they all had in betraying me. I looked down at the engraved silver menu card. My name wasn't even printed right. Mr. David Hale. No middle initial. Wrong font. Not that they'd notice. I was the one who'd redesigned the damn company typeface 2 years ago. But who's keeping track, right? Most men would have walked out, flipped the table, thrown a drink, made a scene. But that's the thing about scenes. They're for people who still need attention. I didn't. I needed silence. A very specific kind. The kind that lets you hear yourself think long enough to turn humiliation into fuel. And if you've made it this far into the story, you're probably one of the rare people who listens before reacting. That's how you spot betrayal coming. That's also the kind of person our team writes for. So do me and them a small favor. Hit that subscribe button. Over 97% of you listening never do. But if you want us to keep going, that one click matters more than you think. Now, back to the dinner. Her brother kept talking. Something about modernizing the vision. He used buzzwords like synergy and vertical alignment, which sounded impressive if you didn't know he once confused CRM with CPR in a pitch deck. Her dad nodded along, proud like a man passing down a sword, even though the blade was dull and rusted, and he'd handed it to a guy who thought the handle was the pointy end. I excused myself before dessert, walked past portraits I'd commissioned, strategy blueprints I'd sketched out in their garage, the office chairs I'd picked because her dad had back problems. Nobody followed, nobody noticed. In the hallway, I paused outside the door labeled Founder's Lounge. It had been mine once, technically still was. I'd had the lease paperwork routed through a holding company no one remembered existed. That door would be important soon, but not yet. I reached into my pocket. A flash drive, black, unmarked. Not because I had anything to hide, just because I wanted them to forget it existed until it mattered. That dinner wasn't a goodbye. It was a timestamp. The precise moment they all believed I'd lost. I walked to my car without turning back, because when you're about to rewrite the ending, there's no need to argue with the authors of the prologue. The sun wasn't up yet when I walked into the office for the last time. I didn't turn on the lights. Didn't need to. I knew that space like I knew my own pulse, where the floor creaked near the server closet, which ceiling vent wheezed when the HVAC kicked in, the exact drawer where the original shareholder agreement had lived before it got accidentally replaced. I moved quietly, not like a thief, more like a surgeon, precise, detached, desk drawers open, papers removed, nothing personal left behind. No photos, no mugs, no cliché-framed quotes about hustle or legacy, just silence and soft clicks of things being undone. I placed my ID badge squarely in the center of the chair, face up, not tossed, not hidden, just there, a little signal for whoever walked in first. The man you erased beat you to the ending. I didn't write a resignation letter. That would have given them a narrative to spin. He left on good terms, or worse. He couldn't handle the pressure. I wasn't going to give them words, just absence, silence so clean it couldn't be edited. Before leaving, I opened one last tab on my laptop. A secure folder, ironically one I'd set up myself when I first joined, back when I thought being helpful meant being trusted. Inside, the debt ledger. Most people would have overlooked it. After all, it wasn't flashy, it wasn't top level, just one of dozens of archived obligations from back when the company was clawing its way through Series B, a series of promissory notes bundled under a venture fund nobody in the family bothered to understand. But I understood. I remembered. See, the fund had looked inactive for years, not dead, just sleeping. The family believed it had quietly vanished after a restructuring. No one had checked the footnotes. No one had traced the paper trail beyond the third LLC. No one except me. And I'd noticed something when reviewing the finance stack a few months back. One tiny clause buried in a 2018 refinance document. Something her dad had likely scribbled past with a Mont Blanc in one hand and a whiskey in the other. It tied the family's controlling interest to debt fulfillment, not default, fulfillment. If someone were to quietly buy out that note, quietly, ownership wouldn't need a dramatic handover. It would just reassign. So the night after that dinner, I logged into a private portal and downloaded the full obligations folder for that fund. I had admin access. Still, I closed the laptop, took nothing with me except a single flash drive. As I exited through the freight door, because the front one had a motion sensor that pinged the receptionist, I passed the giant mission statement mural I helped commission. Growth through trust, I smirked, not out of bitterness, out of clarity. Back in the parking lot, I sat in the driver's seat for a few minutes, letting the heater breathe over my hands. No music, no calls. Just me, watching the light in the corner office flicker on. Her brother had arrived, early for once, probably to practice his vision speech, maybe to try sitting in my chair. He'd never noticed the absence of one document. He wasn't built to look that far down. I sent one email from my phone, just one, subject line, proceed. Recipient, my lawyer, no body text, no sign-off. Because when a man's done talking, the only words left are the ones written into contracts. Let them think I'd sulked. Let them imagine I'd gone to lick wounds. They were about to learn something her family never understood. The real power isn't at the head of the table. It's in the footnotes no one bothers to read. The first 2 weeks under her brother's reign felt like a tech startup promo reel thrown together by a college intern who just discovered stock music. A new company car, matte black with gold trim, a press release calling him a bold new visionary, a full-page ad in a regional business magazine featuring him on the cover, arms crossed, chin lifted, standing in front of the company headquarters like he'd built it brick by brick instead of inheriting it like a toddler with a silver pacifier. The PR team rolled out a campaign with phrases like next-gen leadership, redefining legacy, and a new era begins. He changed the office layout to open concept because some podcast told him it was innovative. He made everyone switch to a new task management app nobody wanted. He renamed 3 internal teams with words like synergy and tribe, and for a minute, it worked. The building buzzed. The board clapped. Her father smiled like he'd found his second win. But then, the small leaks started. A logistics vendor they'd worked with for 7 years suddenly ended their contract. No explanation, just a polite email. We've decided to pursue other strategic partnerships. Then an HR platform pulled support from its API integration, citing compliance concerns. Then came the call from Windcrest Capital, a legacy client, big, old money, always discreet. They paused their next investment round, asked for a full review of contract terms, said there were irregularities. The brother waved it all off in meetings, said they were just cleaning house and setting higher standards. But inside finance, the mood shifted. They noticed something odd. One of the old creditor accounts, archived under dormant status, had shown movement. A routine auto-monitoring report caught it. An alert flagged that a third party had begun consolidating several microloans the company had written off as internal. The fund name rang no alarm bells. Halden Equity Holdings, vague, generic, not flashy, looked like a passive vehicle. But the transactions were deliberate, surgical. By week 4, someone in finance escalated it, quietly. Who's behind Halden? The controller shrugged. Doesn't say. Her brother dismissed it all with a smirk. Just someone buying old paper. Let him. No one challenged him. Why would they? He had the corner office now, the Rolex, the articles, the monthly golf reservation. But behind that, something older was waking up. The paper trail that was never burned, just buried. And Halden wasn't just buying random notes. It was acquiring very specific ones that tied directly into old capital structures, quiet loans, convertible debt. Each acquisition was small enough not to raise flags individually, But strung together, they looked like a puzzle. One the brother didn't know he was standing in the middle of. He doubled down on appearances, booked a slot at a regional leadership summit, talked about pivoting with purpose while the procurement team scrambled to renegotiate supplier terms that suddenly weren't valid anymore. Meanwhile, a mid-level finance analyst noticed something strange in the ledger metadata. The reactivated fund had refiled its legal address, not offshore, not a shell, but local, very local, same city, same district, and, in small print, listed under managing partner, a name they hadn't seen in weeks, but not one they'd forgotten. The firm hadn't started bleeding from a gash. It was 1,000 cuts, each one paper thin, and every time her brother smiled for the cameras, another stitch silently came undone. It happened with the kind of precision that makes people wonder if fate has a lawyer. The form wasn't dramatic, no gold seal, no press release, just a quiet, mundane filing with the Secretary of State's corporate registry. One page, electronic signature, time-stamped at 9:47 a.m. on a Wednesday. While her brother was posing for a photo op with some tech influencers in overpriced hoodies, my attorney submitted Form 1120X, an ownership amendment based on updated financial interest. Under controlling entity, Halden Equity Holdings, under managing partner, David Michael Hale. Just like that, 51% of internal voting rights shifted, without a boardroom vote, without a shareholder tantrum, without a single damn press mention. How? Because 5 years ago, when I helped untangle the firm's liquidity mess during the regional expansion, I wrote the clause myself, drafted it during a red-eye flight back from Denver, Section 4.2(c), buried under convertible debentures and voting rights upon default or fulfillment. Not a default clause. That's what they all assumed. No, fulfillment, meaning if the outstanding debt tied to the clause was fully paid by anyone holding the right kind of note, those voting rights were immediately triggered and reassigned. They thought it was a fail-safe for insolvency. I built it as a backdoor to power, and they never removed my name. That's the part that still makes me laugh. They scrubbed the website, deleted my bio, unlinked me from the press assets. My name vanished from everything visible, except the documents that actually mattered. Corporate filings, debt registries, clause footnotes, because rich families are very good at legacy, very bad at details. The alarm bells didn't start ringing until the email hit the firm's compliance inbox. Ownership structure updated. For questions, contact managing partner David Hale. Legal opened it, froze. Her brother didn't even see it until after his lunch meeting with a potential acquirer, came back to 15 messages flagged urgent. His assistant, clueless as ever, handed him a printed copy like it was a menu. "What's this?" he asked. The compliance officer responded, pale. "Apparently, he owns us now." Her brother laughed, actually laughed, then threw the paper back. "Bullshit, it's probably a typo." But when he called legal, no one laughed. Then came the second wave, vendors requesting contract clarifications, a key investor calling to ask why the board wasn't notified of the shift, a staff lawyer from Windcrest Capital, one of our oldest partners, forwarding the updated filing and asking, "When did this happen?" The brother scrambled, started emailing the family group thread in all caps. "Who approved this?" Nobody answered. Her father was traveling. Her mother didn't understand any of it. And my wife? She hadn't returned a single call since the dinner. I didn't need to storm the gates. They opened themselves. Because the moment that filing went through, the firm wasn't theirs anymore. It never had been. They just never noticed whose name they forgot to erase. The emergency board session was called under the pretense of routine governance review. That's how her father labeled it in the calendar invite. Because admitting panic in writing is something men like him can't bring themselves to do, even when the walls are already on fire. It was scheduled for 8:30 a.m. sharp. Conference room A. Only 6 people showed up in person. The rest dialed in, camera off, waiting to see who would flinch first. At 8:32, the general counsel, gray, tired, too old to lie well anymore, cleared his throat and spoke 4 words that shattered the room. "The clause is legitimate." Silence. He opened a binder and slid it forward, tabbed, highlighted, the kind of thing you don't prepare overnight unless you've been waiting for the storm. In 2018, he continued, Clause 4.2(c) was executed under the liquidity acceleration provision. It tied internal voting rights to debt obligations, specifically convertible promissory notes bundled under the Halden Fund structure. The brother leaned forward. That fund was dissolved. The lawyer didn't blink. That's what we assumed, but the note holder never filed dissolution. The LLC was reactivated and consolidated its positions within the last 60 days. As of 9:47 a.m. yesterday, ownership crossed the 51% threshold. Her father's jaw locked into that familiar clenched position, the one I'd seen when suppliers pushed back or margins dipped. It used to terrify junior staff. This time, no one cared. "And who's managing the fund?" the father asked. The lawyer tapped the folder. "According to the most recent filing, David Hale." The room went quiet. Then the brother exploded. "He doesn't even work here anymore." The lawyer just looked at him. "He doesn't need to." My old company email was already deactivated by then. They tried to send a request for clarification, and it bounced with a generic autoresponder. "This address is no longer active." But legal had found the new signature block. It was stamped across a filing that had just hit the state's database. David M. Hale, managing partner, Halden Equity Holdings, controlling interest, 51.3%. The number did something to them. 51.3, not just a majority, a margin, a deliberate message. Her father grabbed his phone, dialed, no answer, again, voicemail. My wife tried next, 4 times in an hour, left a message on the 5th. Her voice cracked just before the beep. "David, please, we need to talk. This isn't you. It's not how we fix things." Fix. As if this was a squeaky hinge or a forgotten anniversary. Her brother sent an email, the kind written in all bold with red flagged urgency, as if formatting could reverse leverage. He CC'd everyone. It never reached me. The address he used didn't exist anymore. He tried another, my personal one, the one I hadn't checked in weeks. Then texted, "You think this is a game? You're nothing without this family." I didn't reply. Instead, I had my counsel circulate one more document. Nothing dramatic, just a transactional record confirming the next board vote would be chaired by the controlling equity holder. It ended with my new title, in bold, no flourish, no italics, managing partner, Halden Equity Holdings. They didn't just lose me. They lost the walls I'd built, the systems I'd stabilized, the back-end architecture I'd rebuilt from the inside out. They lost the quiet man they thought would sulk in some apartment nursing a bottle and a wounded ego. What they gained instead was someone they'd never truly met. Until now. Not a temp, the owner. The security guard at the front desk didn't even blink. I walked through the revolving door at 8:02 a.m., wearing the same black suit I wore the day I pitched the family's first acquisition strategy, back when they still pretended I was one of them. This time, there were no laminated visitor badges, no check-in clipboard, no "who are you here to see?" Just a quiet nod from the guy in uniform and a whispered, "Welcome back, sir." Funny how posture changes when the title does. I passed the lobby wall where their family name had once been etched in backlit steel. It was gone. The marble was bare now, cleaned, prepped, ready. The elevator ride to the executive floor was uneventful, except for one small moment. When I stepped out, the receptionist, new, young, clearly unaware of the history, looked up from her desk and said, "Are you Mr. Hale?" I nodded. "Conference room B is prepped for your 8:30. Would you like coffee?" "Black, no sugar." She smiled. "Already brewing." The hallway buzzed with unease. Staff walked faster, eyes averted. Not because they didn't recognize me, because they did and weren't sure how to. I wasn't a colleague anymore. I was something else. Outside the boardroom, the door had been updated with a temporary plastic nameplate, Executive Transition Office neutral font. Nothing flashy, but the message was deafening. Inside, the board waited. Her father sat at the head, pretending it was still his. Her brother slouched 2 seats down, scrolling his phone with feigned indifference. A few shareholders dialed in via video, their faces tight, voices muted. I didn't sit. I placed a single folder at the center of the table, thick, clean. "This is the merger letter," I said calmly. "Effective end of quarter, the firm will be absorbed by Halden Equity Holdings." The air went still. Her father leaned forward. "Absorbed? What the hell does that mean?" "It means the name comes down, assets transfer. The entity remains, but not under yours." Her brother scoffed. "You're bluffing. This company is our bloodline." I looked at him. Then it must have thinned out somewhere along the way. No one laughed. I opened the folder. Page 1, the new organizational chart. Page 2, the revised branding slate. Page 3, the transition timeline. By June, every instance of the family's last name would be replaced. Letterhead, email domains, office signage, even the branded notepads. I slid a printed sample across the table. Hale Strategies Group. Her father's hand trembled. He picked up the paper like it might burn him. This is a hostile takeover, he muttered. No, I replied. That would imply resistance. There wasn't any, just negligence. He looked at me like he was trying to find the boy he once tolerated at family dinners, the one who used to bring wine and stay quiet. He didn't see him anymore, because that boy had done something his own children never did. He read the fine print. The room fell into that thick silence only power shifts create. I'll give you until Friday, I said, gathering the folder. Anyone who wants to retain their position can reapply. Titles won't carry over. Performance will. I didn't wait for their response. I turned to leave. As I reached the door, I paused, looked over my shoulder. Oh, and clear your calendars. The signage crew comes Monday. It'll take a few hours to haul down the letters. No one moved, not because they didn't want to, because they finally understood. This wasn't a return. This was an erasure. He waited until my back was turned. That's when he exploded. The moment I reached for the conference room door, he slammed his fist against the polished wood table so hard the water glasses rattled. You were a nobody, he barked, rising to his feet like a child who just realized the game wasn't rigged in his favor anymore. You were a placeholder, an intern with a ring. That's all you ever were. The others flinched. One of the older board members, Hayes, I think, subtly slid his chair back, away from the blast zone. I turned slowly, letting the weight of his tantrum hang in the air like cheap cologne. You think a couple filings make you king? He spat. This company is blood. You don't have any. You married in. You were convenient. And when Dad was done using you, he tossed you out, like trash. I looked at him, calm as still water. And yet, I said, setting my hand gently on the back of a chair, here we are, you ranting in a room you no longer own. His lip curled. You think this is over? I stepped forward, slowly, controlled, and in a voice quieter than the air conditioning hum, I said, you were a liability, secured against an unpaid loan. That stopped him cold, because he knew what I meant. I didn't just seize equity through old paper. I'd specifically acquired the debt his father floated to cover his first failed venture, that boutique tech consultancy he ran into the ground in under 9 months, the one Daddy bailed out to protect the family name, the one I helped bury, politely of course, by cleaning up its contracts and absorbing the mess into the parent company's books. He was still on those books, as a loss, and now, legally, under the new terms, he was listed as an unsecured risk factor. I didn't even need to finish the sentence. He lunged. Security moved fast, because I'd hired them personally. 2 plainclothes agents stepped in from the side doors, neutral, unflinching, hands on his arms. What the hell are you doing? I built this company, he shouted as they dragged him toward the elevator. You need me. You owe me. The cameras clicked, not from journalists yet, from the firm's internal PR team, because I'd ordered the meeting recorded, for stakeholder transparency. One shot captured it perfectly. Him, red-faced, mid-shout, arms flailing. Me, still composed, hands clasped behind my back. That photo hit the Business Wire by noon. Headline, From Temp to Titan, Hale ousts former CEO in stunning turnover. The subheading was even better. Sources confirm full control has transferred to David Hale following a silent consolidation play. The previous CEO was escorted from the premises this morning. I didn't gloat. I didn't even comment. The only message my office released was a 3-word statement. Transition proceeding as planned. Behind the scenes, his family scrambled. Calls went out. Old favors were begged. Lawyers were looped in, but nothing stuck, because for all their wealth, connections, and arrogance, none of them had bothered to notice the fire beneath the floorboards until the smoke got in their eyes, and by then, the building didn't belong to them anymore. He didn't storm in like his son. That wasn't his style. No, her father scheduled a private meeting through one of his old assistants, Linda, I think, the only one who still pretended to respect everyone. It was marked Confidential Strategic Discussion, and when I saw it appear on the new internal calendar system, the one I implemented, I approved it with a single click. 9 a.m., Conference Room C, neutral ground, no board members, no legal observers, just him and me. He was already seated when I walked in, no cufflinks, no monogrammed pocket square, just a gray suit he used to wear back when the company still ran out of a cramped downtown space and he made his own coffee. He looked older in it now, smaller. David, he said, standing slowly, thank you for making time. I shook his hand, firm, professional, the handshake of a man who no longer needed his approval. He gestured to the chair across from him. I sat. I want to offer you a way out, he began. No hesitation, straight into the pitch. That was his genius. His confidence always arrived 3 seconds before his doubt. We don't need to destroy the name, he continued. I know things got personal, but there's another way. I said nothing, just waited. I'm prepared to offer you a full buyout of Halden's positions, he said, sliding a folder across the table. Clean exit, no litigation, no reputational fallout. We frame it as a merger that didn't align, and you walk away with a premium, a generous one. He paused, gauging me. You made your point, David. You're no placeholder. But this doesn't have to be scorched earth. You walk out a rich man. We keep the family name. Everyone saves face. I looked at the folder but didn't open it. Instead, I reached into my briefcase and pulled out something else, a single frame. Brushed metal. Inside it, one document, old, faded, dated July 9th, 2018, Clause 4.2, C, subsection 3, the debt trigger clause, the one he'd signed with a flourish in the margins, too busy charming early investors over the phone to read the language I'd slipped in. His signature sat at the bottom, just above mine. He stared at it for a long time, then leaned back, exhaled slowly. You always were meticulous, he said finally. No, I replied. You just stopped paying attention. He nodded, almost respectfully. You think this is victory? He asked. Wiping our name from the building? I tilted my head. I think this is math, equity, debt, legal triggers. There's no poetry here, Frank. You taught me that. He looked down again at the framed clause. I brought you in, he muttered. You brought me in to keep the numbers from falling apart. I did. You just never thought I'd use the same ledger to buy your seat. He didn't argue. Not really. Just pressed his palm against the glass, covering his signature like that might somehow erase it. I still believe in bloodlines, he said quietly. I nodded. Then maybe next time don't hand the keys to someone who bets the payroll on crypto and calls it brand synergy. He almost smiled. Then he didn't. You're not sentimental, he said. No, I said. I'm structural. He rose, straightened his suit, picked up the buyout folder he'd brought, and left it behind. At the door, he paused, looked over his shoulder one last time. Just do something good with it. I am, I said. I'm untying your name from a company that no longer needs training wheels. He nodded once, quiet, heavy, and then he left, alone, through the exit no one ever used, just like I had months earlier. Except when I walked out, I already knew I'd be back. When he did, he knew he wouldn't. She was waiting near the sculpture in the main lobby, the one I'd had commissioned from a local artist during the firm's first profitable quarter after the rebrand. She hated that sculpture, said it looked unfinished, like something that didn't know what it was trying to be. Funny how that turned out to be the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. I almost walked past her, not out of cruelty, but because I didn't recognize her at first. No makeup, no heels, no curated aura of confidence, just her, quiet, smaller somehow, like the weight of her name had finally started pressing down instead of out. She stepped in front of me. I stopped. David, she said, voice brittle, you're really going to erase us? Us. I looked at her, not with anger, not with pity, with calculation, the same way I'd learned to look at P&L sheets and board agendas. She searched my face for something, softness maybe, a crack, a sign that underneath all of this was still the man who used to memorize how she took her coffee or hold her hand when her father raised his voice in meetings. You called me a temp, I said flatly. Her eyes closed for a moment as if the memory itself burned. That was a joke, she said. A bad one. You know how he is. My brother, I was just… No, I interrupted. Calm, no bite. You weren't just anything. You laughed. That meant you agreed. She shook her head, stepping closer. David, I didn't mean it. You have to know that. Meaningless. Because meaning is measured by what comes next, and what came next was silence. For weeks. She hadn't called, hadn't texted, not when the clause triggered, not when I took the boardroom, not when her brother was escorted out of the building like a drunk at a wedding. Only now, standing in the lobby beneath a name that was already half scraped off the wall, did she decide to find her voice. And I wasn't angry. I was empty. She looked around. You really took everything? I didn't respond, just watched as her hands trembled slightly, fingers tightening over the strap of the designer purse her father once gave her for surviving your startup phase. You used to love this family, she said softly. I used to believe this family saw me, I replied. The elevator dinged, a sleek tone, clean, efficient. She stepped toward me again, eyes glassy now. Can't we just talk? I studied her for one last moment. Not the version I'd married, Not the one I'd built forecasts around, the real one. The one who watched me eat cold dinners alone after board meetings she never invited me to. The one who smiled too politely when her father made jokes at my expense, then turned away like it didn't land. There was nothing left to say. I stepped into the elevator, turned around. She didn't follow. The doors began to close, and just before they sealed, she whispered, "I didn't mean it." But regret, I've learned, is not a currency. It has no buying power, no yield. And in my new economy, silence was priceless. So I gave her nothing, not a word, not a look, just a closing door. It went up quietly in the early hours of a Monday morning, before the staff arrived, before the boardroom filled, before her father's old golf buddies could drive by and pretend not to see it. The crew worked fast. They had instructions. A crane arrived at 5:42 a.m., the old metal letters already unbolted the night before. The marble facade had been scrubbed, buffed, prepped. By 6:30, the last remnant of their name, 6 curved, cursive letters, was dangling midair, twisting in the wind like a chandelier after a power outage. By 7 a.m., the new sign gleamed under the rising sun. Hale Strategies Group block letters, matte finish, clean, unapologetic. The building looked taller with it. At 8:03, the first wave of staff walked in, unsure whether to pretend nothing had changed or openly acknowledge that everything had. By 8:15, photos started circulating. At 8:40, a junior analyst posted a picture with the caption, "New era, new name, same building, very different boss." It went viral by lunch. A small press crowd gathered around 10 a.m., mostly local business reporters and industry bloggers. One, a younger woman with sharp eyes and an actual notepad, approached just as I exited the building for a scheduled walkthrough at a partner firm across town. She raised her phone halfway, respectful but bold. "Mr. Hale," she called, "do you have a comment about the transition?" I stopped, looked back. Behind me, the last of the old signage, the company's previous logo, gold-plated and faded, was being loaded onto the back of a flatbed truck, tied down with rope, face down like a relic from a fallen empire. I turned to her. No anger, no pride, just calm, clinical truth. "Some people," I said slowly, "marry into legacy." Pause. "I bought mine outright." The cameras clicked. That one line would run as the pull quote in Business Weekly, Regional Finance Digest, and a podcast recap from a VC firm I'd once pitched to, and who'd passed. The truck rolled away. The name was gone. And for the first time in the company's history, the man who built its future also owned its past, not by birthright, not by favor, but by leverage, the kind of leverage no one sees until they're already dangling from it.